Hi there. I had someone write into the Leather Beast. This question comes from Amanda, and what she's wondering is how to cut stretchy leather. She's having a hard time getting straight lines using a straight edge and an X-Acto knife. Thank you, Amanda, for writing in with this question. I can help. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a sharp knife. If you're using an X-Acto like this, make sure it's sharp. If it's not sharp and you attempt to cut a piece of leather, it's not going to come through, or you might even get those little winged edges. So make sure your knife is very sharp. But what I have always found that is easiest for cutting thin, stretchy leather is using a rotary cutter. This is, it's just basically like a pizza cutter. You can pick this up at your local art store. Just make sure you apply pressure. There, you're just pushing down and getting a nice, clean, straight line. Again, when using this too, make sure your blade is very sharp. Another thing you want to do whenever you're cutting thin leather is make sure you are applying pressure on the straight edge where you're cutting. This is a small piece of leather, but if I was making a cut on a larger piece of leather, I would want to pull this down. And I'm starting down here. As I'm moving my blade, I'm also moving my hands so that my hand is always in the same places where my knife is cutting. And then the last tip for cutting thin, stretchy leather is using scissors, actually. I do a lot of lacing my bags, basically taking leather like this and cutting thin strings out of it so that I can braid and lace leather bags together. Also, if you're doing tassels and things like that. So what I do is I take my scissors and I just kind of round off any of the corners, or just so you have basically like a more rounded shape. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. Okay, and then you just round this a little bit more. And then I'm a righty, so I hold the piece of leather in my left hand, and I kind of just like start here. And you just kind of hold it with your thumb and your third finger. And you're just going around slowly. You want to make sure your scissors are sharp for this too, otherwise it'll start to hurt your hands. But this is a fairly easy way to make your own leather lace or string. And you just follow that around, and you want to do your best to make sure you're cutting an even width. This is about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little less. And you just keep going around till you get to the middle. So basically you're cutting a spiral. Then when you get to places like this where that's going to be a little tight, you just go in here and round it off a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to cut this a little bit more. Basically, you get the idea. But then basically, you have a spiral, and you can see that some of these are a little, the curves kind of have a little bit of a gather there. All you do is you just kind of pull this. And some people take like a nail it into like a block of wood or their workbench. You might see that, and then against the nail they just kind of run it back and forth. That's basically what they're doing. They're stretching out that curved part. But I find that you can just kind of pull it like this. And sometimes when I see things like that, I just trim it. It depends on what you're using the string for. I do a lot of braiding, so those kinds of imperfections don't really show up when the lace is just hanging out on top of each other too much. And there you have it. A couple ways that you can cut some thin or stretchy leather. I do recommend the rotary cutter, but scissors also work, or your X-Acto or Olfa knife also will give you good results. If you have any questions, please write in to the Leather Beast. I'm happy to answer them. I love getting questions. I'd love to know what you guys are working on, and check out the Facebook group as well.